Today, every day, small cap investors visit Agoracom knowing this is the day to discover the world's next great company, to have their dreams come true. That's why I take to the open road, to find them, to tell their stories, to engage them, to bring them to life, because they want to connect with you from your office, your phone, your home, anywhere. Agoracom, find your dream.
Welcome to CEO Interviews, a production of Agoracom, when we take the time to speak with small cap executives about what's going on with their companies. With us today, for the first time ever, Aras Azadian. He's CEO and co-founder of Avicanna. The company trades on the TSX under the stock symbol AVCN. For our friends in the US, on the OTCQB, AVCNF, and for our friends in Europe on Frankfurt under ONN. Now, for those of you who are new to the story, and that's going to be a lot of you, you're in for a treat. You're about to discover an unbelievable company that has been a sleeper all this time, and for good reason. Avicanna is basically a vertically integrated biopharma company in the cannabis space. But when we mean vertically integrated, when we say that, we mean it. They've got 4 fully operating divisions that are all science-backed and either commercializing or about to commercialize. So they've got a consumer retail side where they've got the only known CBD cosmetics that are backed by clinical trials, more than just lip service. Global distribution is going to begin in 2020, and products being carried by Shoppers Drug Mart. Medical cannabis side, evidence-based medical cannabis. We're going to talk about that, not just running out there for the sake of any kind of generic medical cannabis. Exclusive distribution there through Canada's online store of Shoppers. That's a fantastic relationship, great third-party validation. Their pharmaceutical side has got 3 products already as far as phase 2. So they're doing fantastic work there. And on their cultivation side, 500,000 square feet of cultivation in Colombia. That's USDA certified organic. They made some history there. We're going to talk about that. I won't take away the surprise right now. But here to talk about all that is Aras. Hey, man, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, George. Pleasure to be here.
Hey, we're glad to have you because I think Avicanna is probably the biggest untold story in cannabis. Where has Avicanna been? Where have you guys been?
We've been developing. For the last 5 years, it's the same team of executives, clinicians, researchers, really taking a sophisticated approach towards the future of this industry. We've been, since inception, we knew that we're going to draw that line in the sand, and we're going to be focused on data, on science, on evidence-backed products, on quality products, not just, your typical garage-made basic formulations. And we knew that there is a future of this industry. So let's focus on actually having the intellectual property and the advanced formulations for that future, rather than, promoting and building a company based on thin air.
Well, look, a lot of investors have been really disappointed in the cannabis space in the last 18 months because it came out like a rocket and everyone had high hopes. But Aras, fair to say that this is the tortoise and the hare, where the hare are most of the industry and they just rushed in to try and capitalize on what they thought was going to be, and they did, right? Highly promotional, a lot of money made, but then they fell flat on their face, whereas you've taken the tortoise approach, slow, steady, and now you're a rock solid behemoth?
Yeah, I think we're very well respected within the industry. We're thought leaders. There's many very well respected companies within the industry that are leveraging or utilizing our formulations, paying us royalties, which is a big validation. Wow. So what I would say to your comment around the industry is, this industry is not going anywhere. It's going to be here for the rest of human, history. And we're in the early innings. We're in the beginning of the sector, but in the early stage, you had a lot of people that wanted to leverage off the capital market opportunity, the promotional opportunity. Very few that actually wanted to build companies, and I think that's what happened. I always say, I think the industry is very real. The potential of the industry is very real, and the fact that it's going to be a $2 billion market probably in Canada this year alone tells you what the size of this industry really is. And it is growing month by month. The size of the rec and adult use / medical is all growing. So the industry is real. It's just, unfortunately for the retail investors, many of the early stage companies that are being watched, that were, and made these incredible promises, we're not able to fulfill them. But it doesn't take away from the reality and the potential of the industry.
And that's what I love about this Avicanna opportunity. It's almost as if some investors have gone away thinking, well, stock prices are down, market caps are down, therefore the industry's not going anywhere. But they're all going to wake up one day and realize, hey, it's growing monthly, yearly, decade by decade, and I got to find the real company. So Avicanna for us is definitely one of those. Let's briefly go through your verticals, because you're doing amazing things in every vertical. So let's start off with the one that's probably easiest to understand. It's your CBD cosmetics line. That's being distributed through Shoppers Drug Mart. Before we get into even the product, what does that mean to you guys in terms of validation, and what does that mean to your potential partners that you've been talking to have that kind of validation?
So, like, to start off, when we set out to build Avicanna, we are a biotech company, we're a drug development company, but we know that by the time we get a drug to the market, it's going to be years. So we said, well, let's diversify. Let's create a diversified revenue stream model that allows us to generate cash and ultimately be cash flow positive prior or in advance of any of the drugs actually getting registered. So then we, through our vertical integration, have a raw material business, we have a consumer product business, we have a medical business, and then we have a pharma pipeline. Within the consumer product business, we have what we call Pura. Pura is a skincare line. So it's actually a dermatology or dermacosmetic line of products that have been designed specifically for various uses for skincare. So these are combinations of CBD isolates combined with other natural ingredients. I'll use an example of, we have a cream that's designed for acne-prone skin. It's a combination of rosemary extract and tea tree oil plus CBD. So we develop these formulations, not just throwing CBD into a base cream, but developing really a formula that's targeted for a particular utility. And
it's science-backed, right? It's not George grabbed some CBD, mixed up some stuff, and say, here's a CBD cosmetics line. Like, it's really backed by science. Clinical trials.
We have about 25 researchers, like PhDs and clinicians in the company. So whatever we do, whether it's a consumer product, is treated with the same level of scientific rigor that a pharmaceutical drug is. So we've taken that science approach to developing these advanced formulations. The reason why we call it a cosmetic is its designation in the commercial markets in the United Kingdom and the US is a cosmetic. But it's really skincare products, and they're now commercial in Colombia. They're approved for sales in the European Union, and they're going to be approved for sales in the United States in the next couple of weeks.
So that's a global distribution I touched on at the beginning.
Right.
That's impossible to do, right? If I got Georgia's CBD company here in Canada, I can formulate some stuff and try and sell it online. But in order to really get global distribution, you have to prove to your partners, distributors, customers around the world that. What is it? Is it that obviously it's backed by clinical trials? What did those clinical trials tell you, and in order to pass that on to your customers and your partners?
So you're making a good point there. I mean, anyone can easily go into a bathtub and make some cream and pour in some CBD and call it a skincare product.
Right.
We took a very serious approach to the R&D, identifying which formulations go well with what other ingredients for what particular use. We then did human clinical trials on these products. So we've conducted 3 clinical trials on these products on 3 different ones, one for acne-prone skin, one for eczema-prone skin, and one for anti-aging. We then completed those studies, took the data, and submitted those for approvals into various regions. I can now sell Pura across the European Union because I have the appropriate data, I have the appropriate stability, and I'm manufacturing under GMP conditions, which makes the product registerable and sellable in those markets. I can do the same thing for the United States. I am already doing the same thing in Latin America.
Right.
So the reality is it's meeting those specifications and the requirements for these products to actually be able to be sold in these markets. We've done the hard work. Now we're at the very exciting stage of the commercial. You know, we're already selling these products in some markets. We're expanding into major markets, and these are superior products. They're by far the most advanced CBD skincare products in the world. And they're the only ones that are backed by human clinical trials that we know of today. So once they do get into these markets, which is what we're working on, we get to work with the best retailers, because these are companies that want that level of quality, trust, and data.
They're the ones who are going to do the work for you in terms of making sure George, the consumer, Mary, the consumer, actually knows you've got that this is a premium product, as opposed to Bob's bathtub generated CBD cream. And so I guess just price point alone is going to tell the consumer, hey, this product is selling at a premium to everything else. It's got to be a better product at the end of the day.
Yeah, and it will be in particular shelves that, you know, George's bath tub cream will not be it, right? Like the major retailers of big box around the world, they have standards. You know, we're talking about a stigmatized industry. Some of them are starting to pick up cannabinoid products, CBD products, but they have standards. And when you are an Avicanna, you have that reputation, you're backed up by actual academic and clinical collaborators and research and GMP manufacturing, you're a lot more likely to get on the shelf of these major retailers than in the bathtub formulation. So
absolutely.
So that gets us past the door. That gets us into a place where regulators don't have an issue with the claims we're making. I can substantiate the claims I'm making. You know, the FDA sends out a lot of letters to people saying, hey, you can't tell people that if they try your oil drop, they're going to be safe from COVID. Things like that are happening, you know. So for us, as a pharmaceutical company, we're not in the business of getting on the wrong side of the FDA or Health Canada. We're in the business of doing things the right way, making sure that we have a long-term, you know, visibility within these markets.
Market size, you know, given the fact that you're the only known, you know, CBD cosmetics line that's backed by clinical trials, do we even know what the market size is for that right now? Because you're going into uncharted, great territory, but it's still uncharted territory. Do you guys have any sense for what that might mean in terms of top line revenue, either per category, per country, globally?
So I think this is the biggest misconception within the cannabinoid space, is the fact that people think everything cannabis related is the same category, same market potential. So I think we have to take a step back and first analyze that. My answer to that is, you have your recreational adult use market, and that has X amount of dollars of value. Let's say the Canadian recreational / adult use market is worth $2 billion in 2020. Then you have your medicinal / pharmaceutical utility. And that's not a cannabis market size. That's a chronic pain, anxiety, palliative care, sleep market, which is trillions, you know. And then you have your ingredient side, which is formulations and products that cannabinoids can be included in. So my skincare cosmetic product is not a cannabis market potential, it's a cosmetic market potential.
Okay.
You're talking about $1 trillion industry of cosmetics globally. The difference is, people are not going to just buy your product just because it has cannabis in it. You have to educate, you have to show the data, you have to say, why do I even want CBD in my skincare line? And that's what we explain. You know, CBD has an incredible effect from an anti-inflammatory perspective and more of a cell sort of homeostasis perspective that allows it to be a very good super ingredient to be in a skincare product. But you have to deliver that appropriately. And we've done that work, and we've ensured that these formulations work. So I'm not targeting a cannabis channel or a cannabis market. I'm targeting a cosmetic market within that pure line.
Great clarification. Thank you for that. That's fantastic. Let's hop over to your medical cannabis side, which you call evidence-based medical cannabis. Aras, I know one problem for doctors that I've spoken to myself has been, you know, we understand that there's benefits to medical cannabis, but we don't have any support information that gives me comfort in prescribing medical cannabis to George. So some doctors obviously do, a lot of them do, but a lot of them wanted much more evidence-based. Is that the reason why you went this far, and why Shoppers is you've got this exclusive arrangement with the online version of Shoppers Cannabis?
Absolutely. I mean, if I was to create a sort of a value chain, I would say adult use comes first, rec. It's the easiest, you know, and you can grow weed, dry it, put it in a bag, sell it, complete, you know. And from there comes the same companies, the same product, but they just call it medical, and that's what it is. And then you have on the other side of the spectrum, which is pharmaceutical drugs, which are indication specific, have gone through various stages of clinical development and have been registered. In between that, there's a massive audience of actual patients that could benefit from the utility of cannabinoids for different diseases, different comorbidities, which include, anxiety, pain, sleep, depression, many other areas, right? Spasticity, like in MS and Parkinson's, etc. For those patients, they don't want a joint, and those doctors don't want to prescribe joints.
Right.
So the medical community today is prescribing cannabis in a very small percentage. Let's say less than 10% of the doctors are prescribing medical cannabis, because some are open to it and some are just, they know the patients are going and buying these products anyways. But the medical community has never been provided, at least in Canada so far, with a formulary, so a line of products that are designed for only medical utility. So my products, there's no joints. It's capsules, sublingual sprays, oil drops, topical products that are all appropriately dosed. The dosing is specific, so a patient and a doctor can organize a titration schedule, a regimen on how to increase the dose. These products are always going to be consistently delivered. We're not talking about, is it purple haze or kush? We're talking about CBD to THC ratios and doses.
Right.
Products have gone through appropriate stability studies. So when we say a product is shelf life stable, it means 3 months, 4 months after you buy that product and you're dosing, that dose is still accurate. The cannabinoids aren't actually degrading or, going away. And then finally, we've done the preclinical work. So we've done in vitro, we've done in vivo studies. We've learned a lot more about our products, so that when we educate the medical practitioners, even if we can't say things like, this is good for chronic pain, which you cannot yet, you can at least say, this product works very fast. This product works very slow. This product is topical, it's only good for your skin. So we can add a little bit more data, a little bit more specifications on that delivery. And as a medical only company, the medical community really relates well to that.
And are you finding that that's actually, blunt question, how has it been received by the doctors that you're presenting the products to? Are you really seeing a real turn in sentiment? Is it incremental, exponential? What's the feedback you're getting from the medical community that gives you confidence that they're going to be prescribing them?
So this was frankly caused by the medical community, because our focus was, let's sell products abroad, because we're cultivating, we're extracting in Colombia, we're manufacturing elsewhere. And Canada was really a place where we did our research. We do our R&D inside of Mars District, inside of Johnson & Johnson Incubator, inside the University of Toronto's Faculty of Pharmacy in a collaboration. So we do a lot of our R&D there, but we never thought we were going to come and actually sell products in the Canadian market, at least within the last couple of years. But our reputation, our credibility, our relationships with the medical community, with the top hospitals in this country, and when we speak to these clinicians, they would complain to me and say, Aras, I don't feel comfortable prescribing a medical product from the same company that has recreational products. There is no standardization. There's no actual dose control medicine. So why don't you launch your products in Canada? And that conversation sort of evolved into having conversations with shoppers, which was basically saying the same thing. So even prior to deciding to launch into Canada, we had so much demand for this level of sophistication and frankly, separation between medical products and the recreational products.
Great point.
So we offered this strictly medical line, and it's actually launching this week in Canada. We have a significant number of clinics and hospitals and clinicians and researchers plus patients that are all very excited about this. And I think it's going to have a significant impact on the market. I think it's going to be, it already is the most advanced medical line that's available in the marketplace. And we think it's going to be very successful. And the launch, which is this week, I couldn't have asked for a better launch. If, George, you were to tell me 3 or 4 years ago, one day you're going to launch your products in Canada, and the day you launch your products, they're going to be available through the largest pharmacy chain in the country, Shoppers Drug Mart, and available in another channel, which is University Health Network, UHN, the largest clinical network of hospitals in Canada. I would hug you. I would hug you and kiss you and say, wow, I'm going to launch my products in my own country finally, and I'm going to launch them through the largest hospital chain and the largest pharmacy chain. It's a pretty good start, so I think we're in a very good place.
That's again why I introduced Avicanna the way I did at the beginning. The best, I told everyone watching and listening, this is the best untold story. Look, even some of your own shareholders may not know this, this depth of engagement, communication here, but it's clear that, you're going to make some great waves here. Cannot wait. And when you said you'd hug me, even in a COVID environment, I would hug you back.
With a mask on.
With a mask on. Let's switch over to the pharmaceutical side. I love what you brought up earlier. I love that you said that. You said, look, we're a biopharmaceutical company, but we knew that if we just did the pharmaceutical side, it could take years before we can come to market with something. So you generate these, it's amazing that you guys went down that path and generated the other products in order to create cash flow and financial stability in the meantime. I love that because sometimes it's just too hard to wait years to see what a company does and nothing else. But you're doing great things on the pharmaceutical side. Tell us about your research initiatives. I don't mean deep dive into science, but obviously biopharma, the pharmaceutical side is massive. It's what you said earlier, right? What parts of that industry are you attacking through your side?
It's a good question. I mean, we targeted three major areas when it comes to pharmaceutical products within the cannabinoid space. So one is dermatology. We have a phase 2 clinical trial now with the largest children's hospital in Canada called Sick Kids, and that's a rare disease, orphan disease called epidermolysis bullosa. We're obviously looking at pain, and we're conducting a phase 2 trial on chronic pain where we're trying to measure the reduction of opioid use. And then third is we're looking at some actually more general areas of neurology, such as epilepsy and MS. Now, if I was to ask you, George, do you think cannabinoids have a potential for medical use? What is the answer to that?
I would say, yeah, they must have potential for medical use.
Given years of anecdotal data, historic use, etc. So we all agree that cannabinoids have potential in medical utility.
But we also saw Sanjay Gupta, by the way. That's probably what kicked it off for everyone a few years back on CNN. Unfortunately, she passed away years later, but the epilepsy girl who was having
Charlotte, yeah.
Right, who was having hundreds of seizures a day, and with his own eyes, he saw medical. And he
changed his mind, right? So
right.
And
so,
that was before
the times 10.
Yeah, and that was before the FDA approved the drug Epidiolex by GW Pharma, who've been the pioneers really on the pharmaceutical side. The point I'm trying to make is there's medical pharmaceutical efficacy with cannabinoids. And for that to be regarded as an actual drug, something that every doctor in the world would have to then prescribe for a particular indication, is enormous, because we know it works in areas such as chronic pain, epilepsy, sleep, anxiety, depression. There's many areas where there's already that existing data. So contrary to many of the other pharmaceutical development companies, you actually have a higher potential of success because we do know it works in many of these areas. So pharmaceutical development of cannabinoids is actually quite de-risked because you know that it's going to work in a very high likelihood. What's missing is companies that have taken it very seriously and have actually done robust science, robust clinical trials, and actually generated that data. So we're in that process. We're doing it in parallel with our early route to market products that are generating the revenue for the company today. But the longevity of this industry on the pharmaceutical side is enormous. And the optionality that we're providing to shareholders while generating revenue, being involved on consumer products and medical products, is you have access to the potential of multi-billion-dollar drugs.
Yeah.
Right, and that's GW Pharma's done it again. Their revenue is going up quarter by quarter. When our drugs get to the market, when our pharmaceutical drugs get to the market, the difference will be that I'm cultivating it at a pharmaceutical level in Colombia. My cost per gram of flower is 4 to 5 cents. So we're producing at such a substantial discount, and we're using advanced formulations, pharmaceutical, clinical packages that we will have very good margins when we do get there. But that allows, like the other business models, allows us to really get there.
Now, you mentioned cultivation. Before we get to that, because that's the last part, and I love that part too. You also talked about going to market. You're in phase 2 on 3 different products, which is great advancement there. How soon do you think it might be until your first products start coming to market, until you get through phase 3?
So once you finish phase 3, you go through registration. It depends which market, whether it's Health Canada and the Canadian market, which will be a DIN, or you go through the IND pathway with the FDA. I would say end of 2021, early 2022 is when you start seeing these drugs. But I think a part of that story that needs to be mentioned is Avicanna going to necessarily take the drug by itself through the rest of that pathway? And I think the answer to that is probably not, because we are an intellectual property company. We're a drug development company. We may develop it and go past phase 2, but there's an opportunity for an exit before phase 3, or there's an opportunity to collaborate with big pharma to take a drug into phase 3, because they have that infrastructure. They have the know-how to go from, you know, a successful phase 2 into a phase 3 in a drug registration. So the reason why we're that well diversified is because we have the intellectual property and the intellectual capacity to do many projects at the same time. That doesn't mean that we're going to conclude on all these projects on our own. It's the same way we have a commercial partner for distribution for consumer product. I don't want to go out there and do the selling, you know. So we are the IP company, and I think that's something that in an era today with COVID is actually quite attractive, because intellectual property doesn't see borders, doesn't have flight restrictions. You know, IP travels quite freely.
And with every minute that goes by in this interview, you keep releasing more and more great morsels. And I love the fact that you as a company have decided we're not going to go running around trying to do everything. We're not going to be the sales arm. We're going to do what we do best, intellectual property, and then we're going to bring in the partners to do the rest, whether it's a distributor in Europe or distributor in another part of the world. You're not going to take the expense and the time and energy and the distraction from being this great science-based, you know, intellectual property company. I love that, and I can't wait for. It doesn't sound like you're far off. I mean, end of 2021, beginning of 2022, that'll be around the corner. But the twist, Aras, that, and I never thought about that, and I'm sure shareholders probably haven't even thought about that. The twist, though, that you may get far enough down the path that you have a major pharmaceutical come to you and say, hey, can we partner? You've de-risked it to this point. It's not fully de-risked, but we're willing now to become partners with you. Give the company a handsome check, plus, you know, some of the kick down the street without, now you're giving up some of the upside, but you're also completely de-risking it for the company. I think that's a fantastic model.
Yeah, and I mean, pharmaceutical companies are circling around, right? They're looking at this industry. They're meeting with some of the large Canadian companies, and they're saying, okay, so what do you have IP-wise? And generally, there isn't much there, right? And I don't want to sound arrogant, but you know,
no, it is what it is. If it is what you got to say,
brands, right? They're trying to establish brands, and they have basic MCT oil formulations, you know. And I mean, pharmaceutical companies for hundreds of years acquire technologies, or co-develop technologies based on intellectual property, based on patentability, based on actual data, and that's missing. You know, there's very few companies within the sector that have the level of sophistication and data and IP that a company like Avicanna has. So as those companies get closer to wanting to make an investment or an entrance within the sector, they're going to look at companies like us that have the intellectual property, have the intellectual capacity, and then, which will probably be a segue into the last division, have the vertical integration in place. It's very difficult to have the scientific platform that an Avicanna has from a research. We have 3 research licenses in Canada, inside University of Guelph, University of Toronto, inside Mars, to clinical, which we have collaborations with the best hospitals in Canada, GMP manufacturing. We're partnered up with MediPharm in Canada, with Altea in Colombia. So, and then of course we have the raw material and the cultivation. So not only do I have the IP, but if I partner with a pharma company, I have the entire vertical integration in place in case this product does go into drug final stage and commercialization. And that's something that's not existent in the sector.
It's just amazing, you know, and it wasn't going to do the deep dive into that, but now as you brought all those partners in, it really is a behemoth that very few people know about, and market cap under $50 million is just almost silly, right? In the next 12 months, I think the world is going to turn around and say, why didn't I pick up Avicanna back then? You know, but here we are, and now the story is being told. The last part of the company, the cultivation side. You've got 500,000 square feet there. You made history. I didn't want to say it, but tell us about the history you made, and then we'll talk about why this isn't just George's greenhouse where I'm just planting all sorts of seeds and growing and calling myself a cultivator. There are cultivators, and then there are cultivators. But how did you make history on the export side in Colombia?
We made the first ever industrial scale production of feminized cannabis seeds in the world. We, I think, harvested 82 million seeds, and we made history by being the first to export that out of Colombia. And then we made history by being the first to import that into the United States. So it was a pretty exciting week because all of that really happened within sort of a week or 10-day period where we made history 3 times. And it just shows you a little bit of how the company functions, even on the cultivation side. It's very research focused. We've spent the last 3 years doing a lot of breeding programs. We developed a pretty interesting strain or cultivar that has upwards of 17% CBG, which was once a rare cannabinoid. So we cultivated that commercially.
And that's CBG, just for people maybe listening at home. A lot of people don't know CBG. We all know CBD, but if you can just really quickly touch on what the importance is of CBG.
So CBG was once, or until very recently, a rare cannabinoid. You know, like you have genetics that are expressing, or cultivars that are expressing 20-30% THC sometimes, which for adult use, recreational consumer, that's exciting. You have genetics that express, 20% CBD in the flower, which is very good for extraction purposes for companies like us that utilize CBD. But you would never find a genetic that is expressing more than 1 or 2% CBG, which was a rare cannabinoid. So through our breeding programs and years of development, we developed a genetic that actually has 17% CBG. So CBG is another non-psychoactive cannabinoid like CBD. It has a better affinity, so it attaches to the CB1 or the endocannabinoid system and receptors better than CBD does. And we believe it's going to have significant therapeutic effect in a number of areas. Today, CBG is already being added to many formulations around the world. There's many products that are being commercialized because it's non-psychoactive. It's kind of like CBD, where it's hemp derived. So we produced 80-something million seeds of CBG, shipped up to the United States. We're now commercially producing CBG. But to take a couple of steps back, why we're doing all of this in Colombia is because at some point we realized that as a biotech company, as a pharma company, we need to be vertically integrated. We need to control the value chain. And that was really for three reasons. One, we wanted to control the quality, because a medical and a pharma company has a different specification and requirement than a flower that's going into a joint. Two, we wanted to control the costs. We knew that in Canada, even though we're Canadians, it doesn't make a lot of sense to cultivate here in an industrial scale. And instead of, like many other Canadian licensed producers, getting assets and licenses in 10 countries, we did our research. I traveled to 9 of those countries, and then I chose Colombia. So we're in Colombia. We're in the Santa Marta region of the Sierra Nevada, where we have incredible climate, 12 hours of sunlight all year round, 30 degrees Celsius all year round. We don't have to use fans and air conditioners. We have a sustainable, organic certified by the USDA cultivation project, where we're producing 4 to 5 cents a gram. So a massive discount to the Canadian American cultivation projects. And we're doing it organically and sustainably. So that's where all of this really started. But we are producing, as you mentioned earlier, 500,000 square feet of canopy. It's industrial scale, but we still take the scientific approach to it. So we're always experimenting. We're always developing new genetics. We're always developing new extraction methodologies. We're always developing new cultivation methodologies. But all of this really gives us the third part, the benefit of cultivating Colombia, which is diversification within our revenue streams. We've already been exporting CBD, for example, into 8 countries. So we are actually selling the raw material. We're utilizing it in many different products and many different markets. So this level of diversity really de-risks Avicanna in this very turbulent market that we're all in right now.
And more than just lip service, I don't think you mentioned this, but the Colombian facility is the product, or the facility is USDA certified organic.
Yeah.
Right.
So
which is a huge differentiator.
Absolutely. It's the first one that we've known of in Latin America to get, hemp or cannabis cultivation under USDA certified. And today you're not seeing a massive premium for organic versus conventional, but you will. Like everything else in the world, people prefer organic. When you're talking something that's botanical, that's a plant, there's a substantial benefit in having that organic.
Absolutely.
So we're ahead of our time. We know that, but it's the right pathway. And like we always say as the executive team, it's a new industry. We got a blank slate. We've been doing this for 5 years, but we've got a blank slate. So why not do it the right way? Why not do it economic, make money, but yet be organic, sustainable, socially responsible as well? From the beginning.
I give you guys credit because obviously you must have seen some really wild valuations on companies that can't even hold a candle for you guys. And that must have been a little bit frustrating a couple of years ago to know that you're going down the right path. And when just George's cannabis company is running in, getting a $600 million valuation because I got a couple of greenhouses in Ontario, and that must have driven you nuts. But the fact of the matter is, we know that quality is built over time, but it lasts. And you guys have built something unbelievable, Russ. And I don't think we scratched the surface, but there's so much more about the company that we'll save because we don't want to do a deep dive into all of it. But it's really amazing what you guys have accomplished. Very proud to be, representing you guys and getting your story out. I do want to play devil's advocate though, because I always want, people watching this always know that, I want to ask the hard questions or the question that people are even thinking at home, right? Which is, you're not a mega company yet. You're definitely ready to be there. You've got all the making. So I have no doubt about where you guys are going. But in the meantime, you've got several verticals here. Can a company of your size handle all of these and properly execute them? Or do you run into the problems with trying to manage all of them because they're all doing great, right? You don't have any dormant divisions. How do you handle that without the company being under too much strain?
It's a very good question. I think the first answer is having the right team. So I take a lot of pride in saying, when you look at my executive team, it's the same team from the last 4 or 5 years that we've added, specific global sort of key opinion leaders and scientists, et cetera, but really the same executive team. So we are experts at this. Second, our focus is the IP. So when we develop a formula, we do the research around it, we have the backing, we have the standard operating procedures, that's transferable to many different contract manufacturers around the world. I'm not the one manufacturing. I'm not the one that's going to then put that cream into a bottle, right? So we provide templates and documentation and specifications that need to be met. We've already developed brand guidelines for Pura, for Row, for our raw material business that are established at a global level. So the model is very scalable. The model is very scalable with a small team, which actually allows us to really ride out this sort of chaos that's happening both at a global economic level and also in the cannabis sector. So I think the model is designed to be replicated elsewhere. I think it's scalable. I think we have the right team that focus on different aspects of the business, like our team in Colombia, which also includes a lot of researchers and scientists, but mainly executives and agricultural engineers. They're running that division very smoothly. I used to go to Colombia every 2 weeks, and now because of COVID, I haven't been there in 7 months. And as you mentioned earlier, we're still making history. So obviously, I've got the right people there, executing. My team in Canada is managing everything from research to clinical and commercial. So I feel very good about where the company is going. I feel very good about where the industry is going. But the one part that I miscalculated was that when this bubble does burst, I assume that investors and the audience is going to say, well, there's the good guys and there's the bad guys.
That's what's happening right now.
Yeah, but it didn't happen in that way, George. It's everyone's, like the negative impact of the sector was a blanket impact.
Right. The first wave is always throw the baby out the bathwater. But now we can almost see in the market that people are starting to say, okay, we know this can be a great industry. Right. Let's actually pick the companies on merit. Forget about how many ads you're going to run on some site and forget about how many newsletter writers are talking about you. Now it's going to be on merit. And look, I got very little doubt that Avicanna is going to be one of the, I shouldn't say it. I'll ask you, but do you think Avicanna in the next 12 months is going to become part of the new leadership in cannabis? We know all the big names that have been circulated for a couple of years, 3-4 years, and they've all flopped. Is Avicanna going to be part of the second wave of companies to say, okay, here they are one of the true authentic leaders in the space?
I believe so. I think it's well deserved. And I think if you look at our partners within the cannabis space and non-cannabis space, it's world class. We're talking about in Canada, we work with Shoppers Drug Mart, with MediPharm, with UFT, with UHN. And you take that as an example, the fact that we're thought leaders is no longer, I think, a secret. I think I think the industry, the medical community, they all know, and I think the work we've done, the credit that we have within that community is very well established. The capital markets and the retail investors are not really, they haven't been exhibited the information to know a lot about Avicanna. And frankly, we haven't been out there telling the story. We've been executing. right? So that thought leadership or leadership position within the biotech, science, clinical, medical, we already have that, in my opinion. I think more people will see, but in the next 12 months, what will happen is people will see the products in the market. People will start seeing the revenue, and I think that will separate Avicanna from the many other companies that have been telling a very good story.
Yeah. Actually executing rather than talking about it. Aras, thanks so much for today. This has been a fantastic interview. It's almost like a coming out party, I think, for Avicanna to really start. So I have no doubt you're going to be back. But in future interviews, we'll tackle things individually, your verticals. For example, we'll talk about once the launch has had some time to breathe with shoppers, we'll talk about that. Once the global distribution have started, we'll sit down and talk about just that. But a fantastic overview. And on behalf of us and all of your shareholders, even really a big thanks for taking the time to have this webcast.
Thanks, George. It was a pleasure.
You've been watching Aras Azadian. He's CEO and co-founder of Avicanna. The company trades on the TSX big board under the stock symbol AVCN. For those of you who are in the US, under AVCNF, that's on the OTCQX, which is also a prominent exchange there. And finally, for our friends in Europe, on Frankfurt under ONN. Now, you've watched what you've watched what Aras had to say, or maybe heard it because you've been listening, either playing it on your car, or maybe even through our podcast. Now's the time to do your due diligence. There's a lot of information we know to absorb here, but we also know we got across in a way that made it very, very easy to understand. Now get over to Agoracom, punch in the company's name or stock symbol, get to the profile page where we've laid this all out for you. Really nice, easy to understand, but still detailed enough to really get the depth of this company. Start your due diligence, get over to the company's website, and hopefully what you found is your next great cannabis company. Thanks for joining us. Have a fantastic day. We'll see you next time.